No time for your planning. The lifespan like this fuse is too short. That rocket is taking off. Taking off.
I don't know. I
Taking
think
off.
we've all
It's
three of us
taking
been
off.
making music for so long, and with so many sort of varying degrees of whatever you would qualify as success, right? Like being known in any way whatsoever, that like nothing is particularly surprising anymore. What's awesome is that like there's no, and I assume most people who actively make music feel this way, but like there's not like a value judgment that can be based on anything except the music itself, right? So some of my favorite bands that we know are some people that no one's ever heard of, and that maybe we get to play with one time, or maybe we got to play with a bunch of years ago or something while we were on tour or at some point in LA. And they're amazing, and there's no difference to me between that band and someone like Bus Driver, who we're on tour with now, who's been like my hero for many, many years, right? And it's totally equally thrilling to get to play with both of those acts in totally different ways. But it's like, when you're in it and you're just making music, you sort of understand the hustle of it, and you just start to really appreciate people who are really good at what they do.
Sure.
Like.
And definitely one of the more like exciting and compelling reasons to go on tour is to meet people around the country and around the world who are either doing things that you feel like a sort of aesthetic relationship with, or just doing things that you think are interesting. I love going on tour and getting to see a bunch of like sort of local bands. It's always like really interesting. It's like, well, what does this promoter think is an appropriate act to pair us with? Who are these people? Maybe they're cool. And like sometimes you meet like amazing people that become great friends and collaborators and things you would never normally run into. And that's the most exciting to me, is like to show up on a bill and be like, I've never heard of any of this.
Mm-hmm.
Great, let's watch it all
Right
now.
Absolutely. So that's something that the three of you look forward to as you tour around the country, and as you've gotten to work with like local support, like that's something that you look forward to at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
part of it, this is my answer is going to be real silly, but like, I'm one of the things I'm always concerned with is like, to what degree are we like actually do people know we're a rap group, right? And so every rap group, every rapper has an entourage and hangers-on, and the thing you saying that we're all of a sudden finding people who are similarly weird to us is, I'm always just trying to mine that for like, where's our Chevy Woods to Wiz Khalifa? Like, we need a crew if we're going to be real rappers, right? Like, what the hell? We need our G unit to form around us. Like, we need the sort of the weed carrying features on the, like that's what because like, a lot of people don't, get that we want to play the game like rappers do. Like, we want to be in a rap group that does rap.
Yeah.
Like, there are all these other things that come along with rap that like we are trying, and
all the signifiers.
yeah. So we
Do
just need our entourage put together.
you feel like and that's it's actually good that you brought that up. Do you feel like there's a lot of people that promoters, concert goers, people in general that perhaps misinterpret not only what it is that you're aiming for, but just on a visceral level, just like what they're hearing and how they're engaging you?
I don't know if you can. Yes, you can misinterpret a thing, but I don't know that like I can blame somebody for that. A lot of people interpret it very differently than we do, certainly. That happens all the time, but I think that's probably happened with everything I've done, even my rap projects that are very clearly like rap projects. I feel like people have had different ideas about them than I did of what exactly was going on,
Well, yeah, you can't actually control that. Like to decide, I'm going to make something that people feel X way about is kind of flawed. I think you can sort of set yourself up in such a way that you're adhering to sort of rules and conventions that you've invented that make you feel a certain way about the thing that you're making, and feel like you would interpret it in such a way if you were to find it objectively. But the idea that like you could make something that's going to specifically make somebody feel or think one particular thing, I think is insane. So I mean yeah, there are a lot of different ways to interpret what we're doing, but like I don't even think there's necessarily a right way, and I think we've set ourselves up for something that inspires discussion rather than like asks questions and makes people ask questions rather than provides answers, and I think that I hope we have, because that's what I think the most interesting art
Well, and
does.
there's nothing worse than being an artist who's like, my fans don't get me.
Right, no.
Be glad you've got people listening to you. I mean, and so we appreciate whatever. I will say that I'm often confused by fans who tell us we're the only good rap, or that we're the only rap they like. Because I just want to be like, what do you even hear in what we're doing? Like, I don't.
Because for us, there's so many like
It's
really specific
so rappy.
rap references, like
Like-
we're referencing so many other rap projects. That it's just like, well, if you like, the
It's like you can only like Death Grips. That makes sense if that's the only rap you like, because it's a punk band. It's not a rap group. But if you like us,
Shots
you
fired.
gotta like
There you
rap
go.
somehow. Like I just don't hear it. I don't see what you're hearing in us.
Context is a lot of what people I think hear and approach in music too, and like beyond just listening to the music, like the framing and the branding and the marketing and the perception of something. I mean, I can remember being baffled, like in high school, when all of my like spooky goth friends would profess to hate rap music, but they all liked ICP, and I was like, you understand that this is just like mediocre rap music done by like white guys in face paint who kind of look like you,
Right.
Like that's why you like this.
Making you feel comfortable.
But you understand that it's all of the same tropes as like rap that you pretend to hate, just framed slightly differently.
Done way worse.
Done way worse. Right.
Just as misogynistic and just as violent.
Yeah.
And just as any of those things that, I mean, when I was
More so even.
I was gonna say
Like,
more.
which is kind
Yeah,
of worse.
yeah.
It's just, it's not marketed the same way. It's a
Well,
marketing category, not
sure.
a musical term.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely.
and rap. Well, to me, rap is actually like a pretty specific musical term. But saying like, oh, I don't like rap is like saying like, oh, I don't like guitars or something. It's like, well,
I don't like
it's
guitars.
I actually don't really like guitars, but
There it is.
but you know what I mean. But like, it's an instrument, it's a tool, it's a musical idea. Like speaking rhythmically does not actually really tell you that much about genre, like about like the other sounds, right?
Absolutely.
Like rapping is like a technique, I think, more than it is like an actual like description of a musical genre.
Sure.
Sort of. I mean,
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and
It's like-
that's evolved, and that's whatever. Rap comes with certain connotations, right? And that's
Yeah.
fine. And that's fine. That's why everything. That's why this happens. It's marketing categories, and none of that ever matters to the people who are making it, right? In so much as you just want, we want people to come to the show, like whatever. It's I think within it. Which is why, even if you just look at the collaborators on the last record on CLPPNG, there's noise folks, there's jazz musicians, there's people from all there's film composers, there's people from all just kinds of different walks of
Right.
different genre of music, right? And there's rappers on it. Nobody ever flinched at a project that we gave them. It's not like when we sent a beat to King T, he was like, I can't rap on this.
Yeah.
It was like, this sounds like rap music.
Actually,
to him.
it's true.
He was
Yeah,
like,
nobody ever. We didn't even have to explain anything. Like Gangsta Boo didn't ever once say, "Hey, you guys are kind of weirdos, huh? Like this is weird ass music." Like every review calls us, experimental rap, but she just heard the beat and went, "This is dope. I'm gonna go write my verse."
And then she was like, "Oh, that's cool. What's that sound? And what's that sound? And how'd you make that?" And when she started, we started talking about how like the beat was made and stuff, she got really excited and really into it. It's funny because we actually made for a few of those beats when we were like, "Oh, we're gonna get a feature on this. Maybe we should like just put some drums in there that we take out later, so that they can actually like rap on it." And they're like, and we would make tracks with drums, but then just send them the original and just be like, "Well, we have this track muted in Pro Tools, so that if they're like, where's the beat, we can turn it up." That never happened. We're like, everybody
nobody
instantly
needed training
hear.
wheels.
Yeah. In fact, like most people had us turn off the click track.
That's
which,
awesome. Yeah.
Which on that, especially on that Gangsta Boot track, seems crazy to me.
I mean, I think the more we just are vigilant in interviews about being like, these are things that we like also, and
Right.
here that and you know, yeah. I think those things we start to get asked those questions a little less, or those
Sure.
labels start to come less. But Bill always makes the point that journalists have to boil it down to something, right? I mean, like you only have so many words to write about a thing, and like what's gonna give somebody the understanding that you want about it. Like I understand that struggle too, as frustrating as it is for us or whatever. Like I sort of get it. It's obnoxious.
Well, and because nobody writes about the music,
right.
right? They've got to tell the story of who these people are,
And we're like not
the
super,
fashion
like,
of what, I mean,
and we're not that interesting. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, we're not breaking shit. We're not having crazy. We're not like, we're not running around being crazy. Like, that's not really the story when you're talking to Clipping, right? It's not about like the wild party in our tour van, right? We're driving the fucking Kia Forte.
right.
Like,
Or the personality. I mean, you read rap reviews, and there's nothing about the music or the rapping. It's about how how the writer likes this person's personality, what they think about this person's personality.
Maybe. I think people are struggling with a way to talk about what's happening is really what it is. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think I'm certainly a huge Young Thug fan. Like I think that music's fantastic, and like I think it is confusing from a certain standpoint to have something sitting so solidly in the mainstream that you can't sort of deny it, and for it to also be so weird. It's weird.
Absolutely.
It's genuinely weird stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and that's great. And I think that actually, I think in terms of perspective, opens things up a lot to a genre that's always been wide open, right? Like, rap has always been such a vast genre. It's the thing about saying you don't like rap is also like saying you don't like jazz. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you don't like things with that label jazz, but I bet there's some jazz you haven't listened to that you probably like. Like, if whatever you're into, some rapper does that. That exists. There's so many people, every black male between 18 and 25 is a rapper. Come on.
A lot of white males actually. Between 18 and 25, which is great.
Latino males and like a handful of women.
Rapper is the new,
Everywhere.
guitar, I guess.
Rapper is the new guitar.
Yeah, it really is.
No, but I mean, there are so many rappers and from so many, like, such a variety of experiences, and it's just like it's always been a really wide open genre, and I think now that's because wherever in the pendulum swing of like where pop music is sitting happens to be like over on a weird point now, like people who write about such things are having to figure out how to write about it, and
Just weird.
And to be fair, it's really hard to like write and talk about music. Like, there's not a lot of vocabulary that deals with the actual sound content. Like, even people in music schools and even like professional music, like my experience, working with like film musicians and film composers and things, like conservatory trained excellent players have a hard time talking to each other about music and about what sounds they need to make, and like it's still challenging, and there's some vocabulary and things, but it's as a journalist who might not have like a formal musical education, writing for an audience who doesn't have a formal musical education, it's even harder, right, to focus solely on the sound content. So I get it.
No one's asking anyone to focus solely on it. Yeah, exactly.
No, but nobody talks about it at all. I mean, so many reviews don't even mention what the record sounds like. It feels like it's just about a personality. It's just about a context and a scene, like where they're from and what the scene is, and like what what they're wearing and things, and I
Driver
get
would say their haircuts.
Yeah.
Whether they have cool haircuts.
Yeah.
go here.
And I get it. I mean, it's way easier to talk about, but it's a little frustrating too. And I think reviewers don't quite know what to do with it, because this project is so sort of weirdly anti-personality. Like, we're not. this is not the music that our personalities just sort of spontaneously generated. Like, it's pretty calculated.
Yeah.
We all make a lot of different things, and we had ideas for what kind of music to make, and we sat down and talked about it and then made that, as opposed to just like it sort of happening organically because we're like creative, interesting people floating
Well,
in
and
an
it's all, I
environment.
mean, it's all lies. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
thing. All of our songs, like it's all just lies. I mean, the assumption is that rappers are just being themselves with a beat behind them.
Right.
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 Knees on the Ground was like a hard song. It was it's a definitely sort of an outlier in the way that we process things normally, because like we had feelings about this thing and then wrote a song about it, which is not the way Clipping writes songs. Right? So that was like sort of it's interesting, I think, lyrically at least, where most of the experiment that is sort of ongoing most of the time in Clipping music is like, does it still sound like rap music if we remove the first person from it? If we remove the first person narrative, like what is... And for the most part, yeah, like,
To the point where nobody notices.
Right.
Like nobody notices that the record doesn't have the word "I" on it ever.
Right,
Like
right.
it's that. It was out for 2 months before one reviewer said he thinks maybe that there's that he never says "I" or "me" or "my" or anything like that. It was like,
Right. But with like Knees on the Ground, it's a little different because like the sort of our politics, I think, are obvious over the course of that song, which is a little tricky for us, but we tried to keep it as sort of journalistic as possible, I think, both in the sound choice and in the rapping choice, with just like not, here are things that are in fact happening, and here are noises that associate with that. But there is, when I listen to, we don't perform that song. We performed it last night in St. Louis because we were in St. Louis, right? But like we don't really do that, and it's
kind of
hard.
kills the party.
It's yeah, man. It's
Kind of
a
bums
downer.
everyone out at a
Yeah,
show.
like people be feeling feelings.
Absolutely.
And I be feeling feelings. It's hard to come back from.
Yeah.
It's a sad song, which I think clarified a lot of things for me in terms of how to write this stuff. Also, is that there's a certain amount of like caution and also power in just stating things that I think we've noticed throughout. But just because you remove the "I" from it doesn't mean that your politics are gone, and making sure to massage that carefully is something that I sort of have to keep remembering, I think.
Well, Knees on the Ground is interesting to me too, because it's actually not that different sort of structurally, lyrically, from our song Inside Out.
Right.
Which are both just kind of almost journalistic, objective descriptions of scenes, like sort of still life descriptions of objects in like an environment, in a sort of a painting almost. It just so happens that the events and the situation described in Knees on the Ground are so sort of horrific and timely, that it feels incredibly political, and it has a political agenda just because, in a way, to me, it almost feels like a really objective song, like a very, very sort of clinical, objective description of facts, yet it ends up feeling like it has a very specific politics to me, just because I still don't, I don't know of another way to interpret those events. Like, I don't know of a way to see that situation and not... It's one of the first things I think that I've encountered in my life that feels so severely cut and dry in a very specific political way. And then we tried, we tried to make a very objective song about it, and it ended up being really sort of pointed and political, and I liked that about it.
Yeah.
I never thought I would ever.
It's abstracted too, because it's.
Yeah.
It's a.
Right.
It's not
It's not
specific
true.
to. It's not a Ferguson song. It's a. It's a.
It's a narrative that plays out in a lot of communities.
Yeah, we lived a block away from Fruitvale BART when Oscar Grant was shot, and we were having a party that night, and we had been there earlier that night, and then we were there for, all of the protests afterward. And it's the same event, basically. The facts of the story are very similar, and so that song was for us like about a whole number of these events, you know. So
Yeah, but I think that's sort of what gangster rap has always been, right?
Mhm.
Gangster rap is always, to me, about partying through the horror, you know? I mean, it's, and so these, oftentimes, like, people will come up to me after shows and talk about, like, you know, how cool it is the way that we're, like, satiring rap tropes or gangster rap music or whatever, and the thing that they're latching onto is like, well, yeah, but this isn't really, you're not condoning this. And it's like, well, I don't know what that means. All we're doing is describing things, and that's actually all that rappers do. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's, if you listen to any Scarface album, NWA album, 50 Cent album, right? I mean, like, it's not, nobody who lives in that is unaware of the like real life danger at play, right? When you live in depressed communities and in places that are really violent. No one's unaware of that. No one's unaware that it's unsafe and not a great place to grow up and not a great place to be a child and you know what I'm saying? The job of the music is to like find where you live in that and to party through those things. And so to me, that's sort of what it's always been, and we're not actually doing anything different in that sense.
I am interested, however, that like, yeah, Knees on the Ground bums everyone out when we play it live, but our song about child rape and spousal abuse, people just dance right through that one.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Which is fascinating.
Someone called the rapping, like there was a review of that particular song, and someone referred to the rapping as funny, which I thought was really interesting. I was like, which part is funny? The part where you like...
Yeah, because we definitely finished that song and we're like, whoa!
Yeah.
Rough. This one came out real rough, guys.
Yeah,
blame Alt J.
That one felt bad. Like we
finished because that was a remix for Alt J, and we finished that and we were like, they're gonna not accept
Like,
this.
oh man, this is too.
Because it's so bleak.
like we all just, I mean, yeah.
But their songs are bleak too.
We just
Yeah,
felt
they're
so.
bleak,
I mean, that was part of the idea is that like
Right.
their first big poppy hit was about spousal abuse. So and nobody, you know, was number one on all the pop charts or whatever.
Yeah,
so
that's-
whatever, you know, we were trying to be in that spirit, you know.
Well, it's funny to say it in the same interview where we've just said that people don't listen to or talk about music, but people really don't seem to listen to lyrics either.
Right.
So I'm not really sure what people
What are
hear.
listening to? Yeah.
Your haircut.
To be
Yeah,
totally
totally.
They listen to your haircut.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Bus Driver's been a hero of mine for. Me and Bill saw him when we were like 16 or something, in a safari helmet.
Opening for Lab Tech 1, if anyone
Anybody
remembers
remember
that,
Lab Tech
dude.
1? Anybody? You remember Lab Tech 1?
You got that?
No, you don't. Sorry,
No.
Lab Tech 1. But
It's too bad.
but I mean, there's a reason why Bus Driver's still doing things. Because he was amazing. He was amazing then, and ever since then, I've bought every single thing he's put out, and I used to study that guy. So when he asked us to go on tour for him, it was like probably 2 or 3 days. It was 3 days because it was after Kenny's arrest. It was like 3 days into the tour before I could really talk to him without like freaking out a little bit. I was like so starstruck all the time, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, actually, this year it's been cool because we've toured a shorter tour before this, opening for Shabazz Palaces, and my first concert was Diggable Planets when I was in 6th grade. I was so excited. I was like, those 2 records are 2 of my favorite records ever, and so we've toured with like 2 like for real like lifetime heroes this year, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Milo, man, Milo stuff, like, whatever, I've always thought that kid was crazy talented. I don't think I got it. I don't think I got it at all until I saw him live the first time. And then I was like, oh, I fucking get it now. Like,
Yeah, he's great.
his show is fantastic. And
Kenny's awesome too.
Kenny's awesome. Yeah, Kenny
Yeah.
Siegel. Like, they're all great guys. The tour's been really fun.
Like everybody on the tour like really like values the show and values their contribution to it, and like does more work than they have to make a good show.
Sure.
Like it would be so easy to like sort of each one of these acts on this tour to like kind of phone it in, just press play on an iPod and just kind of, you know, everyone's so talented, they could really just kind of make it happen with no work. But everyone kind of goes to extra length. Like Kenny's really making his beats literally on the fly. Like there's no playback, and like it's really inspiring and impressive to be around like people who aren't lazy. It's kind of a weird thing to say. Like so many artists are so unbelievably lazy that I meet, and it's like depressing and demoralizing to sort of surround yourself with people who like don't really seem to even like what they're doing and can't be motivated to do it. And so to be on a tour with like people who are just gung-ho and working and like excited to go to the next place and always excited to do a show and like really go above and beyond. Like Kenny's writing new tracks in the car every day and playing them at night. You know, it's like that's great. It's really inspiring and invigorating. You know.
I've been mostly impressed that even if people came just for Milo or just for us or just for Driver, they seem to end up liking all of us, which is interesting.
And they stick around.
Around.
Like,
you know,
people don't leave after Milo.
we don't necessarily expect, I mean, you know, we love Milo, but I don't, based on what he does, I don't expect his fans to also like us. And it turns out they're fairly open to what we're doing, and ours are fairly open to what everyone else is doing. I mean,
well, and that's the thing that like music journalism would have you not believe, but that's actually true, is that no one has compartmentalized music taste in a single genre, really. Like, it's entirely manufactured. If you feel like, I only listen to this particular kind of, you know, this particular kind of techno or this particular kind of metal or something, like, I mean, those
teenagers.
Those are the, I mean, it's a teenager.
I was gonna say, it's like when the only
these are-
formation of identity is consumer habit.
Yeah, but these are teenagers coming to our shows too, you know, and like, music taste actually doesn't work that way. It does not actually fit into genres, you know, and the reasons that you may like something and another thing don't necessarily have to be related, but they might be related for reasons entirely unrelated to, like, oh, this uses the same kind of snare sound in these two bands. That's what I respond to. I like tech house. You know, or something like, I mean, that's preposterous to me. Like, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, when we were in high school, the major labels still kind of controlled everything.
Sure.
You know, like your alternative taste was still, at least for me, like you guys grew up in a place where there were like cool record stores and things. Like I grew up in Riverside, California, where there was basically nothing going on. Like alternative music was like a couple of ska bands kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my perception. There was definitely stuff out there that I wasn't able to find, you know. Mm-hmm. But it felt like, it's like, oh, basically your options are you listen to you know, if you're not listening to Britney Spears, you're listening to Nine Inch Nails, and those are your alternatives. And Nine Inch Nails are the weird indie band, but they're on the same fucking major label, you know, as everything. And I don't feel like that. Maybe I'm just older and doing more research, and I live in a big city, and I'm not connected with teenagers, which is all of which are true. But I don't feel like that's necessarily the case anymore. Like, you can just go on the internet and find whatever band you want. You can type in whatever description you want, and you can find a band that matches that, and that can be your band, even if they've never been on a label, have never toured, and have one album on their Bandcamp. And we meet kids all the time, like, who have found us just by being on the internet, you know, and that was just not available to me at all when I was a teenager. It still felt like it was very much controlled by the major labels, so much so that I didn't even notice, you know, I didn't know there were independent labels, you know, until I was in college, probably, you know.
Ski mask on with a burner cell phone, Desert Eagle 50 cal imprint on the backbone. This one is not to be tested unless you got